the Great Wall of China. The name alone conjures up this image of a single stone dragon snaking its way across misty mountains. A structure so massive, the old legend says you can see it from the moon. But here's the thing, almost everything you think you know about it is wrong. The Great Wall is a lie. It's not one wall, but a massive network of fortifications built over 2,300 years by a dozen different dynasties. It's not visible from the moon, a myth so persistent that China's own astronauts have had to debunk it. And maybe the most incredible secret, the one holding its strongest sections together, was a common food. This is the real story of the forgotten techniques and impossible engineering that created one of the world's true wonders. The problem, a world of threats. To understand how the wall was built, you first have to understand why. Before China was a single nation, its fertile heartland was a tempting prize. To the north was the vast, unforgiving Eurasian steppe, home to nomadic tribes like the Zhu Nu. These were master horsemen, made tough by the landscape, who looked at the rich settlements to the south and saw easy targets for raids. Their attacks were fast, brutal, and totally unpredictable. For the early Chinese states, starting way back in the 7th century BC, this was a constant threat to their very existence. The question wasn't if the nomads would raid, but when. The problem was clear. How do you defend thousands of miles of open border against an enemy who can pop up anywhere, at any time, and then just vanish? The answer was a radical idea that would shape the country for centuries. You build a wall. But these weren't the stone fortresses we imagine. The story of the Great Wall starts with something much simpler, the very earth itself. The evolution, from scattered mounds to an imperial mandate. The very first walls were scattered and defensive, built by separate states to guard their own turf. They were made using a technique that's been mostly forgotten today, rammed earth or hengtu. But everything changed in 221 BC, when the state of Qin conquered its rivals. For the first time, China was unified under one ruthless, ambitious leader, its first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. The northern threat, however, wasn't going anywhere. Emperor Qin ordered all the old walls to be connected, strengthened, and expanded into one single defensive line. He sent his top general, Meng Tian, with an army of 300,000 soldiers to get it done. They were soon joined by around 500,000 peasants and a steady stream of criminals sentenced to hard labor. This wasn't just a construction project. It was a nationwide mobilization on a scale nobody had ever seen. The mission was to build a barrier that would protect the new empire, and their main tool was that same ancient method, just deployed with brutal, industrial-level efficiency. The innovation, engineering, and impossible structure. Segment A, the Earthen Foundation. So, what exactly is rammed earth? The technique might be ancient, but it was incredibly clever. Workers would build removable wooden frames, basically making a temporary mold for one section of the wall. Inside, they'd pour a mix of local dirt, clay, sand, and gravel. Then came the real work. Using heavy tools, teams of laborers would pound that mixture, layer by painful layer, compressing it down to about half its original size. Each compacted layer was only a few inches thick, but it was as hard as rock. They repeated this process over and over, creating a structure that literally rose from the ground it was standing on. Out in the dry plains and deserts of western China, this method was perfect. It was cheap, it used local materials, and it was surprisingly tough in dry weather. In fact, parts of these 2,000-year-old rammed earth walls are still standing today. In the Gobi Desert, they got even more creative, alternating layers of sand and gravel with beds of reeds to give the wall more strength. But as effective as these earthen walls were in the dry north, they had one major weakness: water. As dynasties changed, the wall had to get stronger. Segment B, the Stone and Brick Revolution. The Great Wall we picture today, the one on all the postcards, is mostly the work of the Ming dynasty, which ruled from 1368 to 1644, facing a new threat from Mongol tribes. The Ming emperors launched a massive building project that was a huge leap forward in engineering. They mostly ditched rammed earth for materials that could handle centuries of wind and rain, kill fire bricks and quarried stone. This was a logistical game-changer. A whole network of kilns was set up to mass-produce strong, uniform bricks. Each brick was even stamped with its origin, a clever form of quality control. They were lighter and easier to work with than huge mounds of earth, which meant construction was faster and more complex. In the steep mountains around the capital, Beijing, workers cut massive stone blocks to create the wall's foundation and outer shell, using the mountains themselves as a natural base. The wall wasn't just a barrier anymore. It was a sophisticated defensive system, loaded with battlements, lookout posts, and thousands of watchtowers. Segment C, the secret ingredient. But the Ming dynasty's biggest innovation wasn't the bricks or the stones. It was the mortar that held it all together. For centuries, builders used a pretty standard lime mortar. But Ming engineers added a secret ingredient that turned regular mortar into a legendary superglue, sticky rice. It sounds bizarre, but modern science has confirmed why it worked so well. Builders would cook sticky rice into a thick porridge and mix it right into the standard mortar. A complex carbohydrate in the rice, called amylopectin, bonded with the calcium carbonate in the lime. This organic-inorganic combo created a mortar with incredible strength and water resistance. It bound the bricks so tightly that even 600 years later, weeds can barely grow in the cracks of many sections. This sticky rice mortar is a huge reason why the Ming-era walls have survived earthquakes and the test of time. It was a stroke of biochemical genius, turning a simple food into one of history's most durable building materials. This is what makes history so amazing, finding brilliant solutions in the most ordinary things. If you're enjoying this deep dive into ancient engineering, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We have plenty more stories of forgotten genius to share, and you're not going to want to miss them. Segment D, the human engine. For all its brilliant engineering, the Great Wall was ultimately built on a foundation of human suffering. The logistics alone were mind-boggling. Over 2 millennia, countless people, likely numbering in the millions across all dynasties, were forced to work on the wall. The workforce was made up of 3 main groups: soldiers, who were the core construction crews; conscripted peasants, who were often forced to serve for a year at a time; and convicts, sentenced to years of grueling labor on the frontier. There were no power tools or modern machines. Millions of tons of stone, brick, and dirt were moved by hand, on people's backs, or with simple wheelbarrows. In the mountains, workers formed long human chains to pass materials up steep cliffs, one piece at a time. In the dead of winter, they came up with an ingenious trick, pouring water on the ground to create ice paths so they could slide massive stones into place. The cost in human life was staggering. The work was dangerous, the conditions were harsh, and the locations were remote and unforgiving. While the popular myth about workers being buried inside the wall is generally considered untrue by historians, the project earned its nickname as the longest cemetery on Earth for a reason. It was a monument built with sweat, blood, and the relentless back-breaking power of millions. So the Great Wall was never just one wall. It is a sprawling 13,000-mile-long testament to 2,300 years of evolving threats and ingenious solutions. This total length includes every trench, barrier, and wall section from every dynasty. The most famous and well-preserved part, the Ming Wall, stretches over 5,500 miles on its own. The wall began as simple mounds of earth, a desperate defense against nomadic raiders. It evolved into a sophisticated system of stone and brick, bound together by a revolutionary mortar made from rice, becoming a symbol of an empire's power. It's a monument that was shaped by the very landscape it crosses, using deserts and mountains as both its foundation and its natural allies. Its story is a mosaic of different dynasties, each leaving its own mark. Today, the Great Wall stands not just as a defense against the enemies of the past, but as a powerful symbol of human perseverance. It's a story written in earth, stone, and brick, the story of how a civilization, faced with an impossible problem, answered with an impossible feat of engineering that still captures our imagination today.